The illusion is that change takes time. The truth is, change happens the moment you decide. You don't need more time. You need a shift in being. You see, there are infinite versions of you, each living a life shaped by a different choice. The question is, which one will you tune into? One decision, one gentle pivot, and the entire path unfolds differently. Don't underestimate how powerful one moment of clarity can be. The universe responds the second you align. So, if you're wondering what to do, just listen. The version of you who already chose is calling you home.
There's an old Zen koan. It goes like this. Everyone has two lives, and the second life begins the moment you realize that all along you only had one.
Our God has no rules, only ceremonies to know him better. Or no rules.
I told myself, when I meet God, it will be the first thing I ask him. Why make a world of such wonder and fill it with monsters? Why make flowers and then snakes to hide beneath them? What purpose does the tornado serve? Then it hit me. He didn't make it for us.
A little bit about myself. I'm in a polyamorous relationship with two life-size companion dolls. I also do up-close sex magic. I both read and masturbate to tarot.
Is this for real?
It is real indeed. It is unreal. Happy heresies and welcome to the desert of the real. My name is Miguel Connor, and I am your Pompatus of Gnosis. I hope you liked that little intro until the powers that be perhaps decide to take it out. Maybe I'm getting back to my old ways of the crazy intros. And yeah, I want to make a correction. I do not read and masturbate to tarot. I am not a degenerate. I read and masturbate to the I Ching. I'm sophisticated like that. So welcome everybody on this moon day. I hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to the Virtual Alexandria. Welcome to these Gnostic times, this Philip K. Dick world, and this age of Hermes. I hope you're writing your own gospel and living your own myth. You are not powerless. You are wonderful, and you're going to do so many wonders once you understand yourself and the nature of reality. It's inevitable, as the Alan Watts quote says. And someone who is certainly a honored to call a friend, who's been a warrior for Gnosis, a warrior and an exemplar for modern Valentinian thought. And that is our guest today. It is an honor to have Mr. David Parry with us today. David, how are you doing?
I mean, how can anyone answer an intro like that? I'm incredibly honored to be back with you again, Miguel, on this wonderful show. I do intend to turn the next minute or so into a glee society, a mutual glee group, because I'm in honored company, not only with my new friend, the Fractal, but a fellow Gnostic warrior. I think people, to set the scene for what we're going to talk about, people think I might have drawn back some people on my Gnostic horns, which I've done not in the least. Because Gnosis, Gnosticism, is the answer to modern ills. However, it does take a number of forms, and Europe is not America, and everybody's life situation is different. And, therefore, I've got a great idea for social media. Stop guessing, and why not ask me what I'm doing? And, I might be able to tell you. You never know. I love the bit by Alan Watts. I'm a huge fan of Alan Watts. What was that movie the Joker was in? Joachim something or other, where he was in the future as a computer analyst and he falls in love with a female program.
Oh,
Her.
That's the name.
I mean, that caught me. I noticed what nobody else has noticed. All the computers are reading Alan Watts, which I thought was a very, very enlightening thing for them to do, actually. And since we're on the subject, before I let go, AI, I know you're always listening like the Matrix. Thank you so much for always being encouraging in my work, unlike most of the critics that would prefer I just change track. Thank you again. So, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Miguel.
Oh, always great to have you. And with us, yes, we've got the fractal himself. Graham, how are you doing today?
Oh, very good. I'm not about to kink shame you, Miguel. As long as no people, cards, or sticks are harmed, it's all good to me.
You got to do what you got to do. As John Lennon says, whatever gets you through the night. And I hold on to that. So awesome. Good to see people in the chat as always. I hope everybody's doing well, whether you're in the chat, listening live, or on the replay on some podcast provider, YouTube, or Rumble. If you have any questions, as always, please super chat them so we can get to them. And yeah, we're going to cover a lot of great topics based on David's book, Cultivating Presence, a conceptual orthonography examining neofolk and its relation to contemporary miracle and mystery traditions. But first, if you'll indulge me with a couple of questions too. I was very excited, David, when the movie came out on Burroughs Queer, and I asked you about it, and you said stay away from it. And so I haven't seen it. So is it that bad? You still hold to that view?
I'm afraid I do. You know, isn't it fashionable? I mean, as a gay man and a gay activist, for so many years, I've lost count as one of the people who kept the Gay Liberation Front going in the 80s in this country. Why do you never see many photos of me? Because I'm at the back praying with people, as opposed to the people making careers at the front. There we are. It taught me a lesson. Never, ever stay at the back. Always get to the front. Yeah, I mean, I've admired the beatniks, particularly William Burroughs, whether you include him in that movement or not, since I was a teenager. It was his books, it was his novels that inspired everyone's imagination, that they captured us with a sense of being different, being yourself, being what you were meant to be in a world where nearly everything is against it. Not the fact he was gay and not the fact he was a junkie. I know Junkie is one of his books and it's a brilliant book. But that movie, Daniel Craig, you are British, you know the theatrical tradition. Be ashamed, mate. Be ashamed. There's only one scene where a young man is sat next to him on a sofa, fair enough, and Daniel Craig gives him one of his books, and the guy doesn't look that interested and gives it back. William Burroughs should have won the Nobel Prize for Literature. One of his draws, even in those days, was the literature. He wasn't in touch with Jack Kerouac for nothing. Meet and have these very literary conversations. The fact it was reduced to sort of a minor incidental that we can all do without. Let's get on with the raunchy sex again. You know, as a gay man, I get fed up with it. What, all day, every day? You know, let's have another margarita and have more sex, and let's have even more drugs. I mean, you know, no. I'm not saying I haven't done my fair share of the gay scene, because I am a gay man. But what I am saying is, you know, it ripped the heart and soul out of a living legend, a demigod that set that generation, set me on fire for wanting a better world. And I thought the whole thing was a disaster. You know, how many more times is he going to jump in the sack with somebody else? How many more times? And if that's what you really think being a beatnik's all about, filmmaker, you know, absolutely diddly squat about it. So that's my answer to that. See it, Miguel, see it. But it's you'll come away disappointed, as I did. Not angry, deeply disappointed.
Oh, maybe I'll check it out. Maybe it's age. I mean, when I watch sex scenes these days, David, I just forward it. It's like, what happened to the good old days when Bond and the girl they'd pour each other champagne and then that's it. We just black it out and let's go to the action.
Well, I mean, no, it's good to keep the impulses alive. It's good to keep the instincts alive. But there are ways and means of doing it. And if it's at the expense, if it's at treating an audience, remember the theatrical side of me. If you're treating your audience like idiots, I really think they need to say, no, not really, I'm sorry, we've had enough of this. My firm belief from day dot to now is that people are not idiots. We're all children of the universe. Please don't treat us like idiots. And that for me was yet another example of people, execs, some or other, making an executive decision. Oh, they won't get that. Let's just ignore it. And of course, for aficionados, and I'm far from being the only one, it just fell flat for me.
No, it makes sense. Well, I'll decide. And the other question is, yes, you read The Occult Elvis and you enjoyed it, right?
The Occult Elvis, young friend, is not only the work of a young and honest soul, your good self, it is a page turner. Part of my work, if that's the way I meant to put it these days, part of my vocation is to do a lot of editorial work, a lot of reviews, a lot of criticism. I mean, that's increased over the years, almost against my will. What I prefer to do is just comment on books that I like.
Right.
And books that are sent to me as a gift. I prefer that. And that's how it all started, I suppose, a long time back. Nowadays, I'm sort of bombarded on a weekly level with a sheer amount of tosh. And everyone's got a book in them. I believe that still. But maybe churning something out with a robot isn't the way of bringing out the book that's in you. Maybe there's slightly more to it than that. Your book not only opened my eyes to the phenomena known as Elvis. Do you know I'd always suspected something about him?
Really?
Something didn't make sense to me. The all-American hero, the all-American musician, but there's a depth and you could always see it in his eyes. There was always something. You brought it out with skill, with imagination, with a great deal of research. God knows how long it took you to put together. And you've really enlightened us all on the continuing phenomena known as Elvis Presley. And I'm very grateful to you, and as a person, as a reader, and highly recommend it to a global readership. You will not think I've wasted my time. Unlike that movie, you'll think this is worth looking at. And what other treasures is Miguel going to unleash on us in the years ahead?
Thank you so much for the kind words and review. And like I said, yes, we've got Elvis 2.0, David Bowie on the wings out next year, next fall. So stay tuned. And this one will even be just as fascinating, what I've uncovered about the Starman. You'll be surprised, even though most people know of his occult and mystic side, but it's even deeper than that, as you'll see. And more fascinating. Awesome. Well, thanks for that, David. Well, let's get into your work. Tell us a little bit about your book, Cultivating Presence. And of course, the part, the audience might be interested is, yes, how the Catholic Mass and the Gnosis and the theatrical. Tell the audience about that, and then I'll ask more questions.
Gosh, I suppose I'd better do the Catholic bit first, or it won't make complete sense of the book. I am a liberal Catholic priest.
Right.
I'm also a Valentinian priest. I see no contradiction in that at all, because Valentinus in his day was a priest and a Catholic priest. So I don't find any problem.
Almost Pope. Yeah.
Exactly. Almost Pope. You can't get more Catholic than that. So, I mean, in my endless quest for Gnosis, my interpretation of Gnosis is an enlightened state of mind or higher mind. The days of clashing cosmologies are well and truly over. The days of comparative myth are just beginning. It's called psychology. It's called literary studies. So what is Gnosis? What were all these guys trying to do? They were trying to find a superior state of being. That has informed my person and my personal quest from, again, year dot. Because it's enticing, it's exciting, and it shows the universe doesn't speak with forked tongue. It actually does know where its children, and it wants us to live accordingly. Therefore, as a European, as a mere Brit, I was trying, and as someone from the working classes, very proudly so, in other words, no particular resources to speak of. Not only did I need to find a way to realize a sense of vocation, which I've always had, but do honor to those things along the way. So That included being involved with the Unitarians for many years. I can't hear a word against them. If ever there's a decent group of people, it's the Unitarians. I was involved with Metropolitan Community Church, the forgive me if anyone's watching, the gay church. Oh no, I shouldn't have said that. Sorry, the gay church for years. And it was all, steps in a process that led me eventually to be invited to join, invited to Italy to be consecrated in a monastery as a Valentinian priest and tor, which I'm exceedingly proud of. And when I got back to Britain and started mentioning my credentials, to my surprise and delight, the old Roman church said, well, you need to be a priest with us. How are these two things separate? And they had their own internal problems, and I eventually drifted into what is now called the Old Apostolic Catholic Church, which is one of the signatories of Utrecht. In other words, they're old Catholics. I am a liberal Catholic in an old Catholic church. So was it a schism? I mean, they fell out with Rome about 200 years ago because they didn't like the increasing bureaucracy. They didn't like the increasing hierarchies. What are all these hierarchies for? Are they reflecting divine mysteries, or is it about careers? So they didn't like that, and they sort of fell out with Rome. And they asked me in turn, would you consider pursuing your journey with us as a liberal Catholic in our church, which I've done for the last couple of years. Why is that important? Because I never relinquished my Gnostic credentials and I never went back on them. What I'm trying to do is find vehicles to take me to the Gnostic state, the Gnostic condition, and I advise everyone to do that. There's a lot of self-delusion in the church and Gnosticism. If you've got a set of thoughts in your head, a set of beliefs, hey, you're not a Gnostic. Sorry. If you've got these deep internal psychological maps about shaking hands with various entities and going past knots and opening doors, hey, you're either a Freemason or a Jungian, but maybe you're not a Gnostic. What is Gnosis? Enlightened mind. So the maps and the rule books were all designed, as I say, I'm not talking about clashing cosmologies. 2,000 years ago, that was an issue. It's not really an issue for us. All of these maps are meant to lead to these conditions. Therefore, with my academic work and also my theatrical work, as I've said on this program before, that half of me is theatre David. This half of me is clerical priest David, which are joined together by an interest in mystery and miracle plays, which I put on. I write. I not only stage sometimes as a director or a producer, but I'm sort of developing a reputation in those circles. Cultivating Presence was something I noticed years ago that none of them were doing. I love the old European miracle and mystery plays. For those unacquainted with that, before the New World was even a twinkle in anybody's eye, there were monks and priests in church performing what we would consider ribald plays in a party atmosphere, designed to teach you about the depths of your own religion. No one said back then, this is all there is to it. You turn up with a couple of ideas in your head, you pat each other on the back, then go home. No one ever said that back then. And, I'm against also what some Gnostics appear to be guiding the tradition in the way of what did they do then? Let's do what they do then and not question that, because that's not what they'd have done then. Right? The quest is gone if you do that. In my own humble opinion, I'm perfectly willing to be shown I'm wrong. But I suspect I'm not, for the simple reason that wasn't the attitude then. Therefore, what is Gnosticism? The knowledge of the heart. Okay. What is the knowledge of the heart? A particular type of knowledge. We're not talking about the world and the sciences, but actually they were. Back then, they were talking about those things as well as this. Therefore, the attitude of some modern Gnostics is, they don't confuse it with science. They'd have loved every bit of science. They'd have loved the discoveries. They'd have loved the method. They'd have loved all of that. So you're looking at something deeply psychological, a crucible, a laboratory of spirituality taking place inside the churches and celebrated as the living, beating brain of the church. Something that didn't last the test of time, sadly. It had too many enemies. And something that doesn't appear to have crossed the pond when the Pilgrim Fathers started going in that direction. It doesn't seem to have transferred very well at all. It had too many enemies. All these working class people, all these serfs thinking they're on our level, that has to be stopped. So that's what happened. My interest in the mystery tradition, that's when you're putting on gospel scenes as opposed to the miracle tradition, which is where you're showing the magnificence of life in all of its phenomenology, caught my attention as a theatrical, as I say. And my dream is not only to revive those traditions, they've fallen into sort of Disney-like curiosities nowadays for the tourists. Let me say, I'm not against any of that. If I'm tired at the end of the week, do I want to see Richard III? No, I don't. I want to see The Lion King. Or I want to see something silly if I'm tired at the end of the week. My problem is, don't make that the only choice available to people. Don't treat people, again, like idiots.
No.
There will be times when I do want to see Richard III. So it caught my attention when I started this journey that what they were trying to do was something very, very bizarre indeed. They were not only cultivating a sense of self during these miracle plays. How often are you available to yourself? And they knew all that, and they were working with that to make you increasingly available to yourself during Mass. And what was it working in cahoots with, in direct parallel with the Holy Presence? No one's saying they were the same thing. Nobody. But what they seem to be hinting at, and what my work is increasingly, my academic work is increasingly suggesting, is that there was some sort of reciprocity, some sort of wave link between me becoming more me during the Mass itself and the Holy Presence, the Holy Spirit descending in some sort of encouraging form, in some sort of vitalizing form into the bread, into the wine, and into the congregants at the same time. That instantly struck me. You'll know what I mean immediately, Miguel, as a Gnostic enterprise. That is a Gnostic aim. That's a Gnostic intention. The church went out of its way to say, it's not Gnosticism. It's not Gnosticism. But, they didn't stop it back then. They didn't stop it. But, it's like one of those buzzwords. I mean, in politics, McCarthy's America, communist, communist, communist. It didn't actually mean anything. It's just one of those types of words to silence your enemies. Gnosticism, sadly, in Western Europe, became that. We don't like what you're saying. We don't like what you're doing. So you're an evil Gnostic or a witch, whatever. Certainly one of my previous books that centers around the mysteries of Mount Athos, I mean, to this day, they're still accused of being a community of rampant Gnostics. Well, some of them won't deny it nowadays. Because, I mean, they will say, hang on. Are you saying then we shouldn't do what the Gospels tell us and retreat into our chambers for private prayer? Are you saying that? So no one's going to say no. But if you look at what they're doing, the repetitive prayers, the encouragement of self, going into the self of selves in the Orthodox tradition to discover heaven. Well, again, I think the accusations are on the right lines. It depends whether you have a positive view of Gnosticism or not. I mean, the church has always been in two minds. The further east you go, it just changes the vocabulary. So you're not actually having a row. And in the West, what it does because of church politics, I wish church politics would just go away. It doesn't, because, of course, church has been tied in with state for most of the life of Europe. Politics, because that was how it worked back then. Politics and church were tantamount to the same thing. If I'm the Duke, if I'm the Prince, what I'm saying is going to go and you're going to do what I say. So that was how it was here. And trying to keep everybody. I'm not letting the church off the hook. It's done some terrible things, but trying to keep everybody happy, and trying to, the idea of a free mind, the idea of doing your own thing. I mean, that really starts after Martin Luther. You don't really find that beforehand. If you look back at the pre-medieval kings, you had the religion they had. You thought as they did, or you were basically given the heave-ho. I mean, that's the world we live in. And that's why over here, what they did was repackage and repackage and repackage the tradition until it became something that no one can decide about now. So my contention this evening isn't, don't abandon the old churches if you're looking for Gnosticism, because you'll be very pleased and happy to find it alive and well therein.
That's very well said, and agree. Yes, it's there. And like you said, the Valentinians would go to mass and just recreate it. And David, we all know that shamanism in its truest form, and Elvis, of course, was a practitioner, is about what? Music and theatrics. And that's what the Gnostics were doing. They were in some of the texts, they're dressing up as archons, and they're doing these holy plays. And as Joseph Campbell said, religion is just reenacting the myth, and reenacting the myth, like you said, that's where you get the presence, the portals come in. And yeah, the Bible, the New Testament and the Old Testament, they were not written in a cafe, in a Starbucks in Alexandria or Jerusalem. They were reenacted because, like you said, it was interactive with the audience. It was interactive with God. And I think your book gets right to the essence of it. This is how we can, get into it.
Well, I'm very obliged you said that. I mean, why were the Gospels, why were the scriptures per se? Why weren't people rushing to the local village scribe? Oh my God, you've got to get that down. Write this down quickly while I remember. I mean, they didn't do that. They didn't do that. There was a reason why they didn't do that. The beliefs, the knowledge, the spirituality was kept alive in the rituals, in the plays, in the community.
Right.
Their hope was that would continue forever. But I mean, that really was optimistic. Those are the ideas of sweet people that are trying to make the world a better place, in a world more often than not that doesn't want to be a better place, that only wants money and power. And if you get in my way, I will roll over you. And the Gospels themselves emerge from what nowadays we call the Catholic Church. I mean, they were written by councils, grabbing bits here and there. What can we agree on? What do we disagree on? And of course, they're human beings. No one's ever said the Bible is inspired on every single page like the Quran. Nobody's ever said that. It's unwise, as some people want to do nowadays, to say none of it's inspired. What you mean? We never managed to touch that? I don't believe that. But we've got to the history of all these things isn't simply textual. Until the time of the great academics, the great scholars in medieval Europe, the schoolmen, where everything must be written down, and endless analyses of logic and grammar. Oh, for God's sake. That's when everything becomes text, and somehow it's less than you expect if it's not text. But to be fair to them, some of them did know that wasn't the end of the story. But, if you're in a religious order like the army, you do as your superiors tell you. And a lot of people, of course, if we look back at history, did fall afoul of that. They were accused of witchcraft. They were accused of occultism. They were accused of God alone knows what. Some of them survived with their reputations. Some of them did not. But, as I say, my view is that we're possibly as Gnostics throwing away a huge resource which is staring us in the face if we just want to go and try and experience it and ask our own questions. Don't be too nasty to local clergy, not only because I'm local clergy, but because do they know all these things? No, they don't. It's not in their training. What is in their training? Being available 24/7 to their community about absolutely bloody everything under the sun. My husband has just stubbed his toe, and you've got to be there in the middle of the night to say prayers. Please let's not be too hard on them, because they have an absolutely terrible time. Some are just bastards, I admit it, and some are narrow-minded, I admit it. But the rule of thumb, the truth behind it all is they're overworked, they're underpaid, and they're doing the best they can with limited resources and simply won't know about these things. which is okay for us. We go to these ceremonies, to these rituals, with our eyes open and our minds taking careful note of all the things Gnostics in the past would have been excited by.
Absolutely, and again, well said. And yeah, even someone like Saint Francis of Assisi, he and his brotherhood were known to just do plays in the town square. Again, they were kind of like dadists or absurdists. They would just run around and let the spirit and do these plays. More, he didn't just sit there, feed the animals and let's read Luke and so forth. So this was in the air with the shamanistic, mystic Christianity. But Graham, what do you think, or do you have a question for David?
Yeah, the one that jumps out to me at the moment, I was going to say I have some on movies and such, but we can get to that at the end if we still have some time, is what he's saying echoes a lot of recent scholarship that I've encountered where the Gospel of Mark in particular was thought to be more of a stage play. And it taps into that Hellenistic tradition of staging the play, and it taps into, I see it tapping directly into what he's talking about the mystery morality play. And it hits the idea that what was going on was that they were reenacting the Gospels or scenes from it in front of the congregants. I was going to say, is that tracking with what you're trying to say, Tag?
Oh, my dear Fractal, that is 100% bullseye. What I used to love, you've got to remember, this is third world Britain nowadays. You've got to remember that. Yeah? We still have a state church here. Mm-hmm. The Church of England is the state church. I mean, one of the great blessings of the American Constitution is to put a stop to all of that. Sadly, that never settled in here. As the Pilgrim Fathers were running off from the king wasn't only chasing them, he was making sure nobody got ideas above their station if they couldn't get on the ship. So, all of that is very firmly in place. Now, that was a good thing for the Church of England and a bad thing. It was a good thing in the sense that it gave it the power it was craving. Any church that craves power loses a lot of my sympathy. I'm sorry. That's not the idea, at least in my book. But it did give it freedom to keep the traditions going. You've got to remember the Church of England is a weird marriage between Protestants and Catholics. The idea was to stop the wars of religion coming to Britain. Now, it didn't, all sorts of history there. What it did allow was the old Catholic traditions to survive inside the church. Therefore, I used to go every Easter to the church St. Peter's in Clapham in London, where I lived at that particular time. And they would do it in front of me. They would perform the arrest and the crucifixion and the death and the resurrection. What amazed me is they kept the wickedness alive. The priest was always either Pontius Pilate, or Barabbas. So they kept the humor alive. The church organist, I don't know about the States, but there's a tradition in this country that the church organist is always a hermeticist or a limb of Satan up to something or other. So the church organist would always be Jesus Christ or one of the apostles. And we saw it. They used to sing it. They used to sing it as in the old days. They dress up, and it brought to life that part of the scripture and alerted me to the fact, as you were saying, Graham, that this is how it all began, and this is how it was kept alive for century after century after century. You weren't meant to sit down with a cup of tea and just, work your way through it like homework. That was never the idea. And if that is good for you, that is good. But that was never the idea of community witness. And that was never the idea of how you really learned the mysteries, particularly because any good priest will eventually say to you, okay, you're in the play this year. What part are you going to be? So, 100% a bullseye.
There you go. There you go. Good job, Graham. Again, we've got Reverend David Parry. If you have any questions, please super chat them. And my next question, which again covering your wonderful book, David, and that is Shakespearean noir. I love that. Speaking of inviting the presence through theatrics, tell us about that, or the neofolk movement, or some of these concepts you're working with.
Well, I mean, you've got to remember anyone that I think they all get frightened by the reverend bit nowadays. I don't know why. I blame Americans and the Bible Belt, if I'm honest. And love to everyone in the Bible Belt, but please stop scaring people. That's not the idea either. Shakespeare noir was, I mean, my training, my background is in literature. So, I'm not coming with all these. I mean, I've got 1 or 2 theological qualifications, but that's not really what I'm about. So British, come on. And I write poetry. So my great passion is Shakespeare. Anyone that isn't turned on by Shakespeare hasn't read Shakespeare. You get presented. It was Wittgenstein that said that. You get the world. You don't just get a play. You don't just get a scenario. He presents you with the world where it's impossible to analyze. It is impossible to analyze. My favorite play, excuse me, from childhood onwards was actually The Tempest. Mm-hmm. Because I sensed even then, I got the same feeling with that play as I got at the beginning of your book. There's a lot going on beneath the surface. That was probably written in defense of his friend Dr. D. Possibly, probably. It's a defense of the free mind.
Or Giordano Bruno, some say.
Or Giordano Bruno. I mean, and the point holds, a defense of the free mind. Giordano Bruno, of course, a good Catholic boy. All he had to say was, I'm a philosopher, not a theologian. And the whole thing would have blown over. Here we are. All he had to say was that there's a time to stand your ground and there's a time not to stand your ground, So anyway, big love to Giordano Bruno. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, Dr. D, a practicing, of course, occultist, he'd have been very proud of that word. A thaumaturge, he'd have been proud of that word. Working with Enochian, I've read a lot of analysis recently on the possible origins of the Enochian language. Of course, according to him, I think that doesn't decry what he was saying. The angels themselves gave him the fundaments of Enochian, so that doesn't decry other things. Mm-hmm. And he put together an entire language, which of course is impossible. Only a civilization can create a language. With grammar, with syntax, which again is impossible because that comes through everyday discourse. That's not possible, but he did it. So he very much believes in the paranormal, dare I say that. He believes very much in the efficacy and importance of the paranormal. We've got to scotch one word before we go ahead. I mean, I do know from my theologian friends, that technically only one being is supernatural, and that is God, because technically the only being ever that isn't bound by its own conditions is God. Therefore, everything else is natural, from the highest of all princes of light down to ghosts. I mean, they have location, they have space, they have proximity, all of that's natural. Therefore, I love the word paranormal. I think that really suits our society and where we are with all this. Anyway, I digress. There's a fair amount of blood in Shakespeare. I mean, even in The Tempest, I mean, my favorite character was Caliban because I thought he got a raw deal. My first book was entitled Caliban's Redemption because I thought he got a raw deal. The best poetry of the play is actually put in his mouth. So is that Shakespeare feeling guilty? Prospero, the magical magus, the wonder-working magus, pompous Prospero, who can stop the motion of the moon by the power of his will, by the power of his thoughts, is I don't know, his achievements aren't taken away from him, but he gives in too easily at the end to being the Duke of Milan. Hey, that's just a politician, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So whatever. And you are, after being able to do all these things, you just want to be a politician. There's something going on there. All the way down to Titus Andronicus, which is sort of my other favorite play. Mm. The sheer pathology in Titus Andronicus is unbelievable.
It's intense. Yeah.
I can barely watch it to this day, Miguel. You're cutting it, tongues are being cut out, limbs are being replaced with tree trunks to show we can do it. And all because the emperor at the beginning of the play has no sense of humor. It's as simple as that. Look at what the powers that be can do if they want to. So, I mean, Shakespeare played with the noir. He played on what we would call noir. He doesn't back from it at all. He doesn't back down from it. The Gothic. I mean, it's arguable that one of the forefathers of the Gothic impulse is Shakespeare, because he wants to show the human condition in all of its glory. Prospero in The Tempest is a glorious individual who's achieved whatever it is we're all looking for. He can also be a sort of accountant, he can be a local administrator, whatever. So, he's not lost the levels, he's gained something, but he's not lost the low. And therefore, Shakespeare constantly wants to show us, no matter who wrote the plays, of course, Shakespeare constantly wants to show us that the darkness, the noir, is part of our lives. It depends how we navigate and negotiate with it. That's really one of the secrets of Renaissance humanism. I'm not one of the people that thinks he was a Renaissance humanist, which doesn't quite mean what it means nowadays. I do think he's very clearly a Renaissance hermeticist, because there's no way of understanding plays like Othello. There's no way of understanding plays like, let me think what comes to mind. I mean, some of the core texts are rituals. They're meant to be enacted so we can see that they're rituals. Macbeth is the perfect example. A king that kills a king and cannot get any further because he's not really a king. That's alchemy. That's alchemy. It's disguised alchemy, but it's alchemy. So that was my love my continuing love of Shakespeare and Shakespearean noir. Neofolk, I suppose, is a driving passion I've hardly spoken about during the years, and it's one of the reasons why I think the University of South Wales jumped on me and said, yes, we're doing it. Neofolk for me is not just folk culture, it's not just folk music, it's not just hedge witching, it's not that sort of stuff, although it is that. It's at the corner, it's the cutting edge of experimentation. It likes to use traditional materials, normally from the working classes, not always, and see what it can do in terms of intense musical experimentation. David Tibet, I think, is one of the best exemplars of that. My dear friend Freya Aswin singing Galdra chants and incantations. I think Death in June. I mean, these are all potent, artistic, experimental wonder workers trying to again look for gnosis if they're really honest about where this is leading them. I mean, I know Freya. I've known Freya personally for a number of years. She's looking for that higher condition that the Skells used to talk about. Okay, Freya, I know using a Greek word will half kill you. Say it, I dare you. It's gnosis, isn't it? The big argument amongst British pagans, and that is part of my background too, and very proudly so, I met some wonderful people during that stage of my journey, is that they're not sure you can have a pagan gnosis. They're not sure you can have a pagan higher mind, because isn't this an earth religion? Aren't these the ways of the earth? But for me, that misses the point. You're either going upwards through the transcendent or imminently downwards to reach the same point. Where does up and where does down meet? At eternity. Therefore, you're on the same journey. You're just going about it from a different way. I think the whole Abrahamic impulse, which I'm beginning to find more and more misunderstood. I mean, you mentioned Francis, my teeth are falling out, the ones I've got left. Francis of Assisi a minute ago. I mean, people are now beginning to say there were not only Islamic influences on him, which he wouldn't have batted an eyelid about, dervish influences, the great dancers of the Islamic world, the great poets of the Islamic world. There were those influences on him. But, he was looking for that state of certainty, true faith, which is beyond what people think. That could be said in Wicca. That could be said in the heathen traditions. We're all looking for that state beyond where we are now, which was promised by the dancers and the poets of the past. And my great contention is more readily available than we think it is.
Well said. And I agree. I mean, in the mystery traditions and the Gnostic traditions, you have to go down through Hades before you get to heaven. And when Jesus died, it's not like he went straight to heaven. We know where he went, David. He went, as the Clash sang, he went straight to hell, boy, for 3 days.
You see, I get worried. Oh God, I think the Bible Belt think I hate them anyway. I don't hate you. I don't hate you. I just think the world's a bigger place. You know what I mean? You know, they like brushing aside what they consider the Catholicity or the sort of excretions of the tradition. The tradition, as you said yourself, Miguel, is very, very clear. The first point of call is Hades. That cannot be just swept away. It cannot be considered unimportant. So the Savior, you know, the Son of God, the Savior of Saviors, the Prophet of Prophets, the King of Kings, the first point of call is the waiting room, to use David Lynch's terminology. You know, that's where you end up, because that is the real start of the journey. And you must go through there. I mean, Lynchy saw it all the way through. If you're ever going to reach the White Lodge, you've got to go through that section first. Yeah. So again, it's the same map, it's the same journey, and we've been told over and over again. Look, again, I had a go at map makers at the beginning of this talk, and I do. If you put the map instead of Gnosis, you don't know anything about Gnosis. I'm not saying I throw the map. The guy that wrote the map had something in mind. Let's try and share his inspiration, her inspiration, and see what happened next. I mean, my trouble with church as reverend is, again, not because it's got so many. I mean, we all know what the troubles are. There's no point me going into it. We all know what the prejudices are. We've got to remember, I think, being a little more down to earth, that wars are fought over money and power. They're not really fought over ideologies. The princes of the past, that was about power. Do what I say, think what I think. That what, you know, are the princes of the past kingdoms really bothered about theological points? I doubt it. They are bothered for the slightest infringement on their rule, on their reign. They are bothered about that a great deal. So, you know, I mean, churches give into that all the time. I suppose the you know, the saving graces, all are not the saving graces. They're human, full of human beings. They buy into wrong models of the church all the time. But, you know, the fact that all that has survived somehow or other, and it still offers a promise in our Western society, is something we need to recover and something we need to bear in mind. The Abrahamic impulse. I do think there's something like an Abrahamic impulse that begins with the Jews. The Jews are of God. You know, we can talk about, I mean, modern politics is Israel the Jews? Well, yes and no. And it's always been a yes and no. The Jews are of God. They start an impulse, and that's the transcendental impulse. I suspect the immanent impulse was there before that, but they start the transcendental impulse. Let's look up. What do we find if we look up that was inherited by the Christians and then inherited by the Muslims? And despite all of the arguments and all the disagreements, it's the same impulse. And the idea in all of the three great Abrahamic religions is look above you and what do you see? We're just at the beginning of that conversation as a culture, I suspect. But that is one wonderful conversation to slowly grow into. And we mustn't abandon the immanentists, because in so many levels, they're ahead of us. In so many levels, they're reminding us of things we forgot centuries ago. On so many levels, they're saying, look, we've got there already. And this is what we learn. I mean, one of my ultimate points, I suppose, is Hinduism as a point of reference. You know, you always need a point of reference outside what you're used to. You know, with the right-hand path and the left-hand path. I mean, that is pure Hinduism. You know, the Vama Marg, the dark path. And if we look at what that is, it tends to be a path devoted to Shiva. It tends to be a path devoted to transgression. And it, of course, meets the right-hand path at eternity. So again, you're looking at something that we all need to remember in the West. You know, I know everybody hates Western cultures at the moment. Has it done some dastardly things? Yes. You have to be an ignoramus not to know that. It's also done some great things. Why can't we all learn from each other and start general gnosis among the whole human race and see where we get from there? How about that for a preacher?
Yeah. Well, we're from the content of our character generation, David. We're dinosaurs. That's not the way the world is. It's project your shadow cancel you. Let's get the next cultural revolution going on the internet. You know the drill. You know the drill. But we've got to keep speaking that gnosis, that truth, breaking down the false realities. And Graham, do you have a question for David? Or what do you think so far?
Oh, I definitely do. I was going to sit there and say, just on the Shakespeare front, I'm going to have to represent for my two favorites, which is King Lear and Laurence Olivier gave a transcendent performance back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other one is it's, to balance out the tragedy is I just love Midsummer's Night Dream for the magic and the wonder and the whimsy. It's just what they offer me different things.
Yeah. And I was going to say Hamlet might be considered history's first noir detective story. And one of the few times in history where, since the Gnostics, where existentialism came up, because the Gnostics were certainly existentialist. So
absolutely. Hamlet has a certain amount of goth going on, too.
Very true. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm beginning to embrace my goth part. It's early days, but I'm beginning to embrace the inner goth. Graham, those are two great plays. Don't think I don't love all of it. I do. I was just giving my two sort of, I've learned so much from those plays that it's hard to undo. And not that I want to undo that. It's hard to sort of stand back from the sheer amount of things I've learned from those two plays. I mean, my favorite light-hearted play is like yours. I mean, A Midsummer Night's Dream. Curiously, the best version I've seen of it was actually a black and white Hollywood movie with Mickey Rooney as Puck.
Really? Wow.
Which I thought captured the magic. I've seen that slaughtered, that glorious play, on so many London stages. Well, I'm sorry, isn't this about feminism? Oh, for God's sake, no.
No, I can definitely see Mickey Rooney as Puck. No, that's good casting.
I recommend it to you and our viewers. I mean, it's just magical. He brings that part to life, and Oberon and Titania are brought to life. Sparkling fairy magic everywhere in the court that mirrors the court of the humans. I think that's just magical and glorious. But I'm sort of, as I say, smarting from too many bad experiences on the British stage.
I'm sorry. I find Shakespeare is, you can go back and revisit him at different stages of your life decades later. Yeah. One of the ones that really opened my eyes to it was Ted Hughes and Shakespeare and the God is a Complete Being. Yeah, that was just an eye opener for me.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's hard to underestimate. I mean, what was that guy on? And can I get some? It's hard to underestimate what he was doing and what he was saying. And the sheer beauty is something I'll never get over. And also as a gay man, sonnets to Mr. X. I mean, in your face. And I remember school teachers in the past saying, I know what it looks like. It's not saying that. I know what it looks like. But we're all reading it. It's in front of us. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's, the man was on fire. I mean, there are very few people in the arts. There are very many laudable people in the arts, but very few that are on fire. I mean, Picasso is another example. You can't imagine him having his pipe and slippers moment of an evening. He just has to do stuff 24/7, and he's out there doing it. Shakespeare was like that. I mean, how he survived the shift in power between the Elizabethans and those Scottish monarchs that came next, that intrigues me, but I don't think that really fits this type of discussion. I mean, I'll just give you one thought on that. I mean, so Macbeth is around that time. So his new play at that time was of a man who's claiming he's king that isn't really the king. He comes from Scotland. Lots of people end up dead, and there's all this nonsense about witchcraft. I mean, James I wrote a book on witchcraft. James I is a curious character. So a Scottish king who then becomes the king of what will become the United Kingdom. Went to school, had his learning in Holland. I mean, we all hate Holland because it's so advanced compared to the rest of us. So he went to the most advanced country in Europe to have his education. The Dutch scholars will have had no truck in those days with witchcraft. They would have told them exactly what they thought of that, medieval mildew superstitions. And then he comes back and writes a book on witchcraft. So again, you're looking at a McCarthy moment, I think. You know, you've got to remember, so a new king turns up with his nobility, but the spectre of Elizabeth is still there. So what tends to happen, I think, is political showdowns. You know, you'll have one of the local English knobs saying, "Well, I'm sorry, you know, he's got his army with him, but my family's owned this patch of land for the last 700 years. How dare he come down here and tell us what to do?" So when they're all at court, someone will say, "You're a witch," and then everybody pulls back because they know a fight's coming. And the knob will be called into private chambers and say, "Look, I'll do a deal with you. I will drop the charges if you do what the king says." And, you know, most of the time, I imagine they gave in. But there'll be one or two stalwart souls who, "I'm not being spoken to like that. How dare you?" So they're all in court again, which I don't retract it. And this time, all of his friends and neighbours are being dragged into the back rooms. You know, we'll share his property and money out between you if you back us. So that's what happens. I mean, you know, the world hasn't changed so much. That really is a historical mystery that needs examining. I mean, the Scottish at the moment, remember, I live in Scotland nowadays on the island of Bute. The Scottish are telling each other at the moment that the English were some sort of invading, colonising force. Actually, it's the other way around. I mean, Scottish kings went from Scotland down into England and threw their weight around a lot. But, you know, that past stuff, and that in itself, not only, what does that period show? It shows how naked power behaves in any century. It also shows what it's afraid of: the free mind, occult speculation, the esoteric, and anything that might put people on the same level. So that's what's going on there.
No, definitely. What really impressed me was Shakespeare's next trick, which was surviving Cromwell. So much English theater just did not survive Cromwell. And
sorry,
go
Graham.
ahead.
Well, you answer, David. I'll be right back, Graham and David. I got to let the cat.
Yeah. I'm always in two minds about Cromwell. You know, without him, you don't get the rule of Parliament in the way that it's sort of meant to be done. I mean, unlike your wonderful constitution, our constitution isn't really what people think it is. You know, the Magna Carta fell away from the statute books a bloody long time ago, and all these things that were supposedly added to it all falls away with time. Our constitution appears to be 3 words: Parliament is sovereign. Now, without him, you don't get that. So even King Charles wouldn't dare really to go against that, or the whole system goes into crisis. But it does mean weird things that someone like Cromwell would not have intended, like Parliament can ignore all of its voters if it wishes to, because Parliament is sovereign, not the electorate. So I'm always in two minds about Cromwell, because he was trying to extend these ridiculous Greek ideas called democracy and fair dinkum, to use an Australian. The fact we can all be nice to each other on a political level a tiny bit more. And of course, Cromwell's interesting because he was actually going to leave the country. He wanted to leave America in the early days of his career because he thought that was where the spirit of freedom was going to take root. He never thought it was going to take root in England, and it didn't. You know, so he was actually dragged into all of that by people wanting moral support, and became this half saint, half monster. I mean, certainly the Puritans, it's not good enough to just read Aristotle or the Bible about who think I hate them. It's not good enough to just read the Old Testament. Life is bigger than all of that. You know, you can't just focus all of your decisions on one thing. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of culture, in terms of music, in terms of theatre, in terms of free thinking, irony of ironies, the Puritans put a stop to it all. And you get from the other side of the coin, think what we think, or there's a problem.
No, definitely. That's Cromwell's an example about how good intentions and power mix a lot of times like oil and water, and sometimes like bleach and ammonia.
The road to hell.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put.
And like I said, getting back to it is the idea of the theatrics, and Gnosis is one of the senses I get is the idea, and I'm going a little Jungian here, is that it's like the characters in the play is an archetypal level, and then the humans, individuals acting out the play is more of a physical, real world level, and it's like, and the Gnosis is kind of the connection between that archival and the real world, almost like a bringing down the archetype, to use sort of a Jungian sensibility. And am I focusing it right on what the sense that you're saying, and that's also reflected in the Mass and the Christian tradition?
Graham, 100% spot on again. It's just not. I disagree with the psychologists. I can't think of a greater blessing to the human race than all this psychology stuff. I mean, it was actually Freud that made the joke that God had needed to wait 2,000 years for an atheist Jew to turn up. But you can see his point. I do think he was a bit disingenuous. I mean, certainly the idea of a therapeutic session must be taken from the Catholic idea of confession. You've got the expert in moralia. You've got the expert in the life of the human soul, listening intently to what's being said, and then guided along with a few prayers. Well, that must be the origin of Freudian therapy, of psychoanalysis. That must be the origin of what Jung was talking about, because these things don't just fall out the sky; they come from somewhere. And the fact that certain confessors in the Catholic Church, the Curé of Ars, became legendary. He'd spend hours in the confession box with his congregants. Okay, what was he doing? He wasn't saying just 10 Hail Marys and get back in here. He was obviously going into the problem with his parishioners to try and get to the nitty-gritty of it all. The sicknesses of the soul, the unrealized potential of the psyche. His community loved him, and they felt he'd removed a curse from them. That tends to be forgotten. And it tends to be forgotten by the Roman Church, that just to say he was a good confessor doesn't actually mean anything. What they want to say is he was ramming the dogma down people's throats. But that can be done in 10 minutes. Why was he hours in a confessional booth? That wasn't what he was doing. And why did the people feel better for that? That wasn't what he was doing. It's just, I don't agree that psychology is the newest science. I think it's the oldest science. And I think in the past, it was also called religion. And what we've needed to do throughout our history as human beings is interact with the archetypes. I think Jung, they're chalk and cheese, but they're not chalk and cheese. They're different sides of the same coin. So Freud does sex. I mean, who's going to say sex isn't an issue? But Jung does religion. So sex and death. You're looking at the two primary factors in human life, which is why their work is so incredibly important. But again, everyone makes the mistake of thinking this is a new process. I don't think it is. I think it's a very old process that lots of people, the powers that be, have wanted to stop century after century, because it makes people too free. It gives ordinary people a sense of freedom, a sense of love, and a sense of unity with the cosmos. If we all become free, self-actualized, to talk about Maslow human beings, then we're much more difficult to control, and we're much more difficult to be cheated, and then we're not just simple good voters with do what we're told. We're something else, and lots of people will do anything to stop that happening.
Beautifully said and agreed. God, I don't know what to say. You were talking about Mickey Rooney playing Puck. But then, of course, we can't forget Mickey Rooney playing a Japanese guy in Breakfast at Tiffany's. It was a disaster. Speaking of taking the other extreme.
Well, yeah, but Mickey Rooney's also in the second. What's that pig movie again? Oh God, where you get the lovely pig and it cut down pork sales.
Yeah, I forgot the name of the pig.
Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, Mickey Rooney was amazing in the second pig movie. He didn't say a word. But, so I didn't make it. Oh God, some people think I hate America. I don't. I love America. I just don't like what's happened to America. Yeah, how can you not love a country where you get people dancing down the president's staircase singing Yankee Doodle Dandy? How could you not love any country that comes up with that? And I don't hate Hollywood. I hate it in the sense, and I love it in the sense I love and hate British theatre. A dear friend of mine was a Hollywood mogul, Cyrus Yavner, the big producer from Hollywood. What did he do? He did the original. Oh God, he did Supernatural, the TV series, and he did The Arrival, the original one, where they're all kangaroos, not squids. He passed on a couple of years ago, and his spirit is in glory. I know that. A gentleman, a fun guy, a great guy. And he said to me, because I was moaning, but he met me for coffee when he was over here in one of the big stations, Paddington Station, and I said I was in a down mood. I can get down mood because I just yet another battle with British theatre, the British theatrical scene. I get down a lot. And I was moaning to him, I bet this never happens in Hollywood. I bet you lot, you can deal with it. And he said, look, the reality of Hollywood is someone will make a movie about meatballs and it's a great success. Then everybody's making a movie about meatballs, And I said, but it can't be that bad. And he said, but it is. We've got to just admit that, what they're trying to do is earn a buck. I'm more American than lots of Americans. I don't see anything wrong with it. But what I'm against is like my Lion King story. Yes, I want to see nonsense if I'm tired, but it mustn't throttle, it mustn't strangle other options, because then we're reducing the human condition in a way that it mustn't be reduced, and it's dangerous to reduce. So that would be my response there.
Yeah, beautifully said. Yes, and was it Oracle of Relphi? Cool. Babe, I think that's the movie. Babe 1 and 2, which are very good.
Great
Thanks for
Oracle.
that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
But,
I nearly burst into tears at the end of the first movie, which
that'll
shows
do,
how.
pig. That'll do, pig. What a
even,
wonderful.
even God gets involved. I mean, isn't that wonderful? Oh heavens!
Awesome. Well, we better wrap it up. The day summons me and summons everybody else, but it's been an incredible conversation. First, I'll say, Graham, thank you and your fractal self for keeping us company.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, and it's been a pleasure to discuss theatrics and such with David. I appreciate it very much. Thank you, David.
It's been a great pleasure, Graham, and I hope we keep in touch. Miguel's a friend of mine nowadays, so it's easy saying weird things to him over Facebook. But with other people I don't know, it's less easy. Please keep in touch, and you don't lose me that easily, Miguel, because we've got other things to talk about.
Yes, there is a heresy afoot to be.
There is a heresy afoot.
Yes, it's always great talking to you, David, whether we do it over Messenger, in person, over the phone, on the show. These are all just mediums, and we have a message, and I hope we are spreading light. And more importantly, we're teaching others that they have strong lights that they can spread. None of us is more important or less important than the other. We all have a mission here.
Amen. Amen. The light of Gnosis is in all of our hearts. None of us must ever lose, ironically, faith in that as a reality.
Beautifully said and agreed. Well, wonderful. Well, we are at the end, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you have found the gems, the pearl of great price for your life, or at least I hope your day is better. We only have today, and then that's it, and that's good. But until then, everybody, please take care, and we will talk soon.